Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Nathan Schneck. I'm the Developed Data Officer here at PACT. And this is our COVID-ASM working group that we've kind of launched actually over a year ago at really the beginning of the pandemic, trying to bring folks together to discuss and share updates about what was going on in ASM communities related to COVID-19 at the pandemic onset, and it's evolved through some data collection efforts that we've been able to work with a number of partner organizations through support from the World Bank's EGPS trust fund to do. And that fund has also followed on with a number of activities that have helped provide practical assistance and response efforts in a number of different ASM contexts. And so this call is the third in a trilogy of webinars that we've hosted around those response funds that the World Bank has supported. And so today we're profiling 3 different speakers and response efforts in a webinar titled Innovations in ASM Supply Chains During COVID-19. And so it's a really interesting and exciting topic to think about how in the face of this pandemic and the disruption that's caused, there's this opportunity for innovation as well, and new solutions and new opportunities. And so we're going to hear about that today from our 3 different speakers. Just a couple of housekeeping notes for folks. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. We'll also take questions and have a Q&A after the presentations today. So if you have any questions during the presentations, feel free to chat those, and we'll handle those at the Q&A session at the end. You can also share your microphone during that Q&A and ask your question verbally as well. Additionally, this call is being recorded, so we will post it and make it available on the Delve website, or sorry, YouTube page for folks to access it as well. And so just so folks are aware of that. And I don't think there's any other kind of updates from my side to share. And with that, I think I'll queue up our first presenter for today. So we have Ms. Chei Murakami. She's the Executive Director of Diamonds for Peace. They're a nonprofit that aims to improve working conditions and social status of workers in Liberia's diamond supply chain and promote ethics and fairness in the diamond industry. And they've been working since 2014. Ms. Murakami is the project director for the EGPS response fund intending to target artisanal diamond mining communities in Liberia. And so we'll hear about that work that they were able to do in partnership with Empowerment Works, a nonprofit that works in the international development space around policy development and research. And so with that, I'll hand it over to you, Shay, for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. So hello, everyone. I'm Chie Murakami. I'm from Diamonds of Peace, and we implemented the project maintaining the resilience of artisanal diamond mining communities in Liberia. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the context and background in Liberia. Next slide. The project has 3 components: health, economic, and research. And but the main activity for this project is health. So in Liberia, last year in March, the government closed the border, ordered to close all the schools, churches, mosques, entertainment centers, etc., and prohibited the gathering of more than 10 people. And then in April last year, the government locked down the whole country. So at the same time, the health authorities ordered Liberian citizens to keep their COVID protocols. However, we found that people, especially in rural communities where the majority of mining communities are, didn't practice or didn't observe the protocol, merely because they didn't see any COVID case in their communities, and also they couldn't afford the items like masks. And after a few months, the Liberian government eased those restrictions. So especially after that, people became very relaxed, and they have acted like COVID doesn't exist anymore. Until recently, the variant of COVID arrived to Liberia, and the positivity rate is increasing right now. And another important context for this project is that there was an Ebola outbreak in Guinea in February this year, which is very close from Liberian border. And I believe this was more shocking for Liberian people who lost so many people a few years ago because of Ebola virus that came from Guinea. And we implemented this health component in 2 counties in Liberia, which is Bomi and Bapol counties in the western region of Liberia, as the map shows. So the implementing team for this project consists of 2 organizations. One is Empowerment Works, and the other one is in Diamonds for Peace. Next slide, please. So under the health component, we conducted a preliminary survey to understand the COVID and health situation in details in the targeted 17 mining communities, developed the contents and materials for health and soap making workshop based on the results of the survey, and convened the workshops in all 17 mining communities. The focus of the workshop is hand washing. We decided that because it was not practiced very well in those communities, but it's one of the essential protocols for COVID. And also it's effective to prevent contracting from other diseases like diarrhea, typhoid, and Ebola. Under the economic component, we developed a due diligence tool, a set of questions based on craft, targeting a diamond mining cooperative in Liberia, and tested it with the cooperative and improved it. We also developed educational materials to introduce the idea of responsible mining and due diligence that the cooperative members had never heard of before. Under the research component, we conducted a survey targeting licensed diamond exporters in Liberia to understand their business situation, needs, and challenges. We also introduced them on the idea of responsible sourcing. So this online call is about the innovation, right? So I just want to mention a little bit about what innovation we had in this project. So one of the innovation factors for this project may be that we included exercises in the health workshops that visualize how the germs spread and the effectiveness of soap that germs run away from, etc. In a society, people believe myths and supernatural things. It's difficult to get them understand something they cannot really see physically. So we tried to visualize as many things as possible. And another innovating factor is that we developed the first due diligence tool for a diamond mining cooperative based on craft. I believe it's the first attempt to use craft by a diamond mining cooperative. So the key achievement for the health components are 72% of the workshop participants were women. This is mainly because we convened the workshops on weekdays and women were more interested in the topic. And we did pre-test and post-test in the workshop, asking what to do to help the patients if they see particular symptoms. And their median score for the post-test improved. And we monitor the participants' behavior after the workshops in May. And before the workshop, not many people practiced the hand washing after coming back from the outside, after using the toilet, and before eating. But this number improved significantly after the workshop. I think that's one of the reasons that we introduced how to make soaps, and we made soaps together in the workshop. And at the time of monitoring in May, one community already started to make soaps on their own without our help. And 2 other communities were preparing to do so by collecting the ingredients. So the achievement for economic component is that the cooperative members became to have a kind of understanding about the due diligence and its importance and benefits for themselves. And we believe this is an important first step for them to plan and practice responsible mining in the near future. As for the research component, we identified potential exporters of diamonds to be mined by the cooperative, and they showed interest in responsible sourcing after we explained what it is to them. So regarding the sustainability strategies for health, we continue monitoring and encouraging hand washing practice, collaborating with women's groups in those communities. And we shared a set of health workshop materials with the ASM related stakeholders in Liberia, so they can use those materials for free anytime if they want to. And you can also download the materials from the link below for your reference, and also you can use it to convene a workshop if you like. And for the economic component, we will continue educating the cooperative members on responsible mining and due diligence, and we will plan together how they can practice responsible mining in the future. And there's another project by the World Bank, and they are developing the 4 smart mining standards. So once those standards is developed, we will incorporate that standard into the due diligence tool, and we will keep improving the tool and use it with the cooperatives. And we are planning to sensitize the Ministry of Mines on the importance and benefits of the due diligence so that they will adapt it as an official tool in the future for Liberian ASM sector. And for the research, we will use the information gathered through the survey to develop the transparent and accountable supply chain of diamonds mined by the cooperative. So this information will be used very effectively. So it's a short presentation, but that's about it. Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you so much, Che, and for that. And we'll certainly have time for questions. I imagine there'll be a number around the due diligence implementation. I think it ties in very nicely, I think, with Sebastian's presentation to come, which we'll also look at diamond supply chains as well. But our next speaker to queue up here is Professor Giorgio De Tomi. He's the Executive Director of the University of São Paulo's Center for Responsible Mining in Brazil. The center was established in 2012 and supports responsible mining practices with a social and technical approach, and really orients integrated management of mineral exploration, mining development, and governance and sustainability. And so I think what's really exciting, and Giorgio brings together that academic and non-academic collaborators around this topic of small-scale mining, and really reinforcing that interdisciplinary work that can happen between academics and non-academic collaborators. So Giorgio, I'm going to hand over to you for your presentation about the response efforts in Brazil.
Okay, can you enable my sharing, please?
Yeah, I will. Second.
Yes, sorry for this delay. Right. I believe you can see my screen, yes?
Super, yep.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Nathan, also for the nice introduction of the research center that we run at USP. Excellent introduction. I expect to use your definition because it was very well presented. Okay, our project was based on artisanal gold mining in a district in Brazil, located in the state of Mato Grosso in Brazil. It is located in the Amazon between Cuiabá and Santarém. It's called Peixoto de Azevedo, also known as Peixoto. We did some of the initial impact reporting of last year in this. One of the districts that we studied was Peixoto. In general, we found these numbers, okay? 75%, they did not expect to have adequate access to healthcare. So it was very scary for the miners. However, 57% have received some support, some service support from the government and from different institutions as well. In general, the cooperatives played an important role in supporting the miners during the pandemic. In particular, Peixoto was one of the most advanced in terms of finding solutions, okay? They set up specific partnerships with state, regional, and federal health organizations and agencies to provide support and assistance to the miners, okay? And that has been carried out with success, okay? Of course, they suffered quite a lot with the pandemic, but they were able to overcome, so that was an important lesson for everybody. It is a very large mining district, artisanal mining district, in which you have open pit mining, you have alluvial mining, and you have underground mining as well, okay? So we were able to contact most of these miners during this project this year, okay? In terms of the main achievements, we established this relationship between our team and the local cooperative. And I want to mention that as a group of researchers, we also include different partners, and we took this team involved this team in the project, and the relationship was very important, okay? Because they were very wary of relating to academics, to other organizations, so to establish the relationship was an important point. We also found out a way to communicate during the pandemic. That was a major achievement, okay? Because people are isolated in these places, and with the pandemic, it was very difficult to reach them, okay? So establishing communication during the pandemic was a major achievement in general, for them and for us as well, okay? And the other important point was sharing knowledge using webinars and streaming platforms, okay? Just to have you an idea of the communication, this is an outdoor that the cooperative put out there in the road when you arrive to the site, okay? They were so like engaged with the project that they put up this outdoor to communicate to everybody that we are carrying out this project. In terms of impact, okay, really we were able to sharing knowledge and hold open discussions on critical issues, okay? And what are the critical issues? We did a similar approach to the previous presentation. We did a survey first, we understood the issues, and then we went there and discussed with them, okay? We also have these webinars, and we were very surprised that there was quite a lot of attendance on the webinars. You know, they have done, they were online, live online, but remotely, right? And we had good audiences. And also, as a result of these discussions and the environment of open discussion and sharing knowledge, the miners started to ask the cooperative to plan for organizing central procurement and a site laboratory, okay? And as a result of the direct result of the project, we also have all the projects being discussed and implemented with the cooperative just now. Okay, the challenges, as far as we are concerned, we had to carry out surveys and interviews during the lockdown. So that was a difficult issue to overcome, okay? And we were surprised that the miners were very much onto social media. So we were able to communicate at the time that they were available and willing to communicate with us. So that was really important and a good lesson for us. Another important challenge, supply chain information in artisanal gold mining is very scarce, and the miners are really reluctant to share with us, okay? So we had to break this barrier through interviews and contacts and engaging, sharing information and so on, in order to get, you know, to establish this channel of getting information on the supply chain. We were partially successful, but it was a good start as far as I'm concerned, okay? And the communication between the cooperative and the miners, that's also important, because by bringing outside specialists, the cooperative was able to have more direct conversation, technical conversations with the miners, and they were able to get some new demands and new understandings of their expectations, okay? So that was also an important achievement. This is just an example of the way they did the seminars locally, and we transmitted via webinars, okay? With due care and so on, but very well organized. Key findings, okay? Well, the miners expect the cooperative to have a broader role, okay? They would like central procurement, and they are asking for central good purchase. They're asking the cooperative, okay? And we also found that the labor relations are mostly informal, okay? And that has an impact on the supply chain, okay? But it is the way it is, okay? Most of the agreements, the labor relations are based on verbal agreements, okay? And cooperatives are expected in general, inside and outside, to encourage more formal arrangements. And the pandemic, COVID pandemic, has exposed some infrastructure deficiencies, okay? Especially in the public health sector, okay? And the cooperative started to address this using an approach of partnerships, okay? So I'll leave some questions for you, okay? I would like to know, or like one thing that I'm curious is that if other cooperatives around the world, you know, artisanal mining cooperatives, they use central procurement, okay? They provide central procurement to the miners. I don't know if that's common. Also, I believe that most labor relations are informal. Is it the case everywhere? There is a way forward for this? Because we felt a lot of pressure to change that. And finally, should the cooperative assume a broader role beyond the supply chain? I believe so, especially when we talk about sustainability, ESG, and the scenario for the 21st century. So I would expect that. Finally, just to close, I want to thank all the team that was involved. We have two of my colleagues here, Carlos Henrique and André Xavier. Both are here, and I want to thank them and the rest of the team for helping us to carry out the project. Thank you, Nathan.
Super. Thank you, Giorgio, for that great presentation, I think, and it's great to see the enthusiasm from that billboard you shared, as well as all these questions you posed for us here to consider around cooperatives and the role and experience that cooperatives play. And I know that relates really well with what Chase already shared, and I think it'll tie into what Sebastian is going to share with us, and hopefully in the discussion we can tackle some of those questions and hear from the audience as well. So I'm going to just queue up my screen to get Sebastian's presentation up, and he'll be our next presenter. Give me a second. All right, I think folks can see my screen.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Nate, and hello, everybody. So Tara de Jong and myself, labeled as the CAR consulting team, have conducted a desk study over 4 different ongoing and successful mine-to-market initiatives in different minerals. And although we are tagged as a CAR consulting team, we have not researched on CAR, on the Central African Republic, but we have researched on successful initiatives to inform the CAR government as it is building a wide set of reforms of supply chain. So we've talked about CAR in this platform already. CAR is a major mining country. Although it is very small, a large proportion of the population lives off mining. Perhaps one of the biggest proportion in the world. 100% of gold and diamond are mined artisanally or small scale over there. COVID has exacerbated the problems that car has been facing for the past 10 years. Problem of disconnection between miners and exporters, problem of conflict, and very powerful smuggling networks. So the direct marketing option has been a reflection for at least 10 years, but it always aborted. 2 years ago, the last attempt was a group of UK-based jewelers, but it aborted as well. So we looked into those 4 case studies in the next slide, please, to see how these initiatives adapted to the pandemic challenge and why these initiatives are being successful. All of them are successful. All of them would deserve a full session. They are interesting, groundbreaking. I encourage you all to look into their websites. And I already apologize for not giving them the full credit they deserve in the limited time I have. So GemFair, in the next slide, GemFair deals with diamonds. Under GemFair in Sierra Leone, 150 miners are enrolled, trained, and they sell their stones based on international pricing to the De Beers Group. It's the largest mine-to-market diamond initiative so far. Under Moyo Gem, with 400 miners, most of them women, the miners offer quality stones and a compelling story. It has grown exponentially for the past couple of years and has now reached 4,000 fully traceable stones sold. Virtue Gem is interesting, dealing with gemstones, because it's an initiative that was born of COVID. The 3 founders helped vendors sell their gems through an online platform. And finally, the Artisanal Gold Council is a veteran organization, as we know, working in over 20 countries. And we looked in particular into the new gold initiative they're partnering on in Burkina Faso, based on a full supply chain partnership. So with this in mind, what did they do in the face of COVID? GemFair had to suspend purchases, but stayed there, maintained presence, field presence, distributed food drop-offs, and started introducing new pilot approaches to productivity with hand augers for artisanal prospection, wash plant for washing, but also land reclamation with backfilling of pits, etc. GemFair had long realized that the fair price, that famous notion of fair diamond price, wasn't enough to attract and maintain loyalty amongst miners. So there was already a training program that transferred competencies to the miners. What was interesting is that COVID led De Beers to increase it significantly. Interestingly, I would say that this applies for GemFair, but also other initiatives. This type of non-commercial support, like food drop-offs, mirrors very much the traditional financing system in diamond supply chain, whereby local dealers provide a social safety net, often for exploitative reasons, but still, it's interesting to see that in this case, one innovation is actually to go back to the traditional financing system without the exploitative system. Moyo Gems also distributed food packages and protective equipment, but it had to rethink its processes significantly because international buyers, because of COVID, could not come to the market days, which is the moment where stones are valuated, bought, and exported. So they had to increase the level of partnership they had with local brokers. And these local brokers help miners sort out their parcel, negotiate on their behalf against a flat 5% fee, and they had to increase this. So it actually cut down their cost, which is good for their sustainability. In the case of Virtue Gem, so Virtue Gem basically demonstrated that complex supply chains can operate online. And this has been I guess, a discovery for all of us to realize with COVID that we could, even complex corporations and organizations could work through Zoom. So even supply chains can work through Zoom, and it was surprising for everybody. Let's just say for VirtuGem that it assumes enormous risks as a sales platform. And what's interesting is that straight from the beginning, it warns participating buyers and sellers that there should be a risk sharing. Okay, it has been tremendously successful and lately attracted other supply chain actors onto the platform, such as cutters and dealers, which was not in the plan in the beginning. I didn't mention, but both MoyoGems and VirtuGems are developing a market for lower quality goods, such as healing crystals, which was not the case before COVID. I'll get back to that later. And AGC did not fundamentally change its overall approach, but increased its support to the evolution from artisanal to small-scale mining through mechanization. Next slide, please. So what are the key ingredients? As I said, each of those case studies would deserve a full session. So these are the ingredients that we're not sure of, that they are interesting to consider. On the approach to miners' benefit, one of the lessons that we learned is that there's no such thing as a fair price. And even if there were, it's not enough to attract and maintain loyalty between miners and buyers. So we should actually talk about a fair playing field, where the market is discussed, but there is an equal access to knowledge and an open and transparent communication. All case studies told us that actually spend more time communicating and explaining the whys and the hows than actually doing business. So their business is more of a service to put people in touch. The notion of premium, interestingly, is not absolutely necessary in a successful mine-to-market approach. VirtuGem offers a 10% premium managed by the Association of Miners, but it's not the case for the other initiatives. So one lesson here could be that there should be a customized definition of what a benefit is. Benefit is not only the fair price, it's not only a premium, so it's really the result of a conversation with miners of what they really want beyond sales price. What we see is that all of them are looking at improving productivity through mechanization. That is also interesting. In terms of their approach to market access, this one is really complicated, and I only have 30 seconds to mention it, so I hope you'll bear with me. But I mean, there are two approaches. Either you differentiate your product and you create niche marketing, for example, in the ethical sourcing market, or you don't differentiate your product and you sell into the mainstream. Most discussions in CAR regarding mine-to-market approaches have only spoken of product differentiation, niche marketing. But what was interesting in this case study is that some of them approach the mainstream market, like AGC, for example. AGC is interested to work with clients in the billion. So obviously, they don't differentiate their products. MoyoGems and VirtuGems sell a story, so they do product differentiation. Gemfair is somewhere in between. They don't want to compete with LSM diamonds, but on the other hand, they are able to buy all the diamonds that the miners bring to them, because their internal system is to sell them through the De Beers Group auctions. So in a way, they don't differentiate their product, but it's not a mainstream market approach either. Let's mention quickly the unique role of financiers and brokers. It's working with them is necessary. Some of them don't work with them, like Gemfair doesn't, but MoyoGem could not work and could not be successful without the tremendous work that the local dealers are doing on the ground. And finally, on gender, some initiatives work heavily on gender, some of them a little bit, but what we found, especially in MoyoGEMS and VirtuGEM, is that the business model of women working with women was very powerful to build trust in a record time. And finally, these are the key ingredients for sure in the next slide: trust, standards, and diving in. So these are ingredients that we found in all 4 case studies. Trust is interesting because all case studies use standards and sometimes contracts, but these never replace the elementary trust between partners. And trust works both ways, right? Miners should trust their buyers. Usually when we speak about mine-to-market approaches, we create standards based on downstream expectation, and we try to address the trust problem, the trust issues of consumers. But we should also address the trust issues of miners. And this is what all of the 4 realized. So how to build trust? Field presence. All of the 4 case studies maintain field staff throughout the pandemic, even when they were not buying. Transfer of competencies and technologies is a big one. And finally, and this is what COVID exemplified, the capacity to act as a safety net, such as food drop-offs, for example, or land reclamation. In terms of standards, what's also interesting is that everybody works with standards, either exporting standards that exist or asking for third-party certification. What we found is that there is a gap between the upstream and downstream expectation regarding standards. Generally, OECD-inspired standards focus on the conflict and human rights risks, but miners are more concerned with other type of risk. For example, in Sierra Leone, they are more concerned with land degradation. So, and at the same time, many consumers have a limited understanding of the realities in developing countries. So building standards is something that should apply to consumers and miners, and it should be done together with the participants. And this is why those 4 case studies have been successful. And finally, dive in and learn by doing. It looks pretty straightforward to put it like that, but in the past, attempts to organize mine-to-market initiatives in the CAR are very much focused on pre-feasibility studies, indicators, results, expectations, etc. But this is really not possible in this type of groundbreaking initiatives. So, none of these studies had done complex feasibility studies before. They just dived in and learned by doing. Even GEMFAIR, for which De Beers has dedicated many years of preparation, GEMFAIR changed many of its features in the recent years. So this has an impact on financing, and this will be my conclusion. Donors are not usually as flexible as private investors or social entrepreneurs when it comes to diving in and learning by doing. And for good reasons, obviously, they are accountable to the taxpayer. But instead of having these initiatives funded by donors, we should try to think of a solution that would combine the role of social entrepreneurs and investors for market and sales, such as the 4 case studies that we are looking at, and the participation of donors to address larger development problems. Because in the ethical sourcing world that we all represent over here on this platform, sometimes we have the tendency to believe that a fair price and trade of minerals would just solve all development problems. And we also ask them to be sustainable and profitable. So this is difficult to achieve both, but let's split the responsibilities between donors and social entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, for that really informative presentation. And I think you're right to say that there's a lot that could be said individually about each of those initiatives and efforts. And I guess I'm wondering if this information will be made more public, the report kind of findings potentially. If you know that, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something. I think that you bring up a lot of great points that I'm wondering if it'll be communicated more broadly in other forum as well. So I think right now we'll transfer to the question and answer session, kind of portion of our presentation today. And I think it's certainly a lot of information that our presenters have shared here, and there's a lot of different kind of threads of connectivity too. I'd love to hear if there are questions from folks in the audience. Feel free to unmute yourself to ask, or put your question in the chat. We can engage that way. But I'll maybe just start as the moderator here to. I think one of the themes across the presentations is this point that Sebastian, you really harped on around trust, and how, you know, all of these initiatives demonstrate that even through this pandemic, right, that created some level of social isolations or distance, right, there you were able to continue to build trust in these communities because of established relationships or because of new contacts. And I think it's one of the questions when we think about innovations in supply chain that you brought up, Sebastian, how, you know, we need to return, you know, remembering that the building trust is one of the key central parts of working and engaging with miners in communities around these supply chains, and getting supply chain information like you demonstrated, Giorgio. And maybe I could just ask each of you to share maybe one of the ways that you think that trust, you know, is how are we continuing to learn to build that trust in through your experience, and what's informing your approaches in the future with your work or research. So maybe we'll start with that question. I see we've got a number of other questions coming in, but just some thoughts on trust and how that's informing this experience, your future work in these communities contexts.
Sorry, Nate, is this a question for me or to the
broadly to the group? Anyone that would want to jump in.
Implementers of these case studies are on the platform right now.
Certainly, that's great. We'd love to hear from them too. If they're, I see there was a hand raised by Ruby as well.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it wasn't a question really. It was just a quick clarification on a couple of points that Sebastian made. The one being around our route to market. So it's not really accurate to say that we have always and will always sell via our internal sales channels. That's really, we're still piloting that. So I would make that a little bit more nuanced. And then secondly, unfortunately, because of the pandemic and travel restrictions, we weren't yet able to pilot hand augers and wash plants, but that's definitely in our agenda as soon as borders open up a little bit more. But yeah, if there's any other specific questions, I'm also happy to input.
Excellent. I see we have a couple participants raising their hand. Immaculate, would you like to share? You can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm Immaculate from Papua New Guinea, and I just want to mention an experience I had trying to run a workshop on the small scale mining and also to do an awareness on COVID. So I faced a problem with trying to reach the miners, basically because the borders in the country was closed, and even it was at the provincial level, we call it here, and then at the district local level. So the miners were finding it hard to reach a central location where I was trying to run this awareness. So basically my question is like, when the borders were closed locally or at the national level, and miners were difficult to have access to information and all that, and especially for me, I found it hard to run the awareness programs to the miners in regards to COVID and all that. And so I am trying to understand like how the others have managed to bypass that, and if there was COVID restrictions, how was it possible for them to even reach the miners? And we understand that small scale mining is done in very remote locations. So maybe someone could also share
Great.
how that was done.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want to share a little bit about the economic aspects. I did a survey while running that session, which was not fully attended by the miners because they couldn't have access to where I was running the trainings because of those restrictions. And one or two that attended mentioned about finding it out to bring their gold out to sell to the buyers because of those COVID restrictions. And so they had to keep their gold and they didn't have access to markets. And it was difficult and it raised risks of theft and all that, you know, when people keep gold in their homes and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So then market access was a very difficult problem, especially in countries and in developing countries. So my question is just how this was bypassed when we know that COVID restrictions were placed and it really, from my experience, affected the way I was trying to bring this information out to the miners. And yeah, on that note, maybe we could see a way in terms of technology and accessing markets for local miners, if we could like probably use tokens to help miners to have access to markets and all that. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for those two questions, Immaculate. And I think Giorgio or Che, maybe you could address that first. Either of you could address the first question around how did you engage with miners when there were different COVID restrictions in place? What were some of the ways that you used to connect with miners that might have accommodated for the restrictions in each of your contexts? We'll start with that.
It's like Sebastian said, you know, like social media and communication platforms helped quite a lot, and we were surprised that the miners not only they were engaged with that, but they were willing to. They preferred to do it that way because they could choose the best time to communicate. Okay, so it is an important achievement, like progress that we have. However, it was possible because the cooperative used their political power to install antennas, right, for communication in the region. But that was very important because it enabled better communication and, like Sebastian said, made the connection in the supply chain more broader and more and quicker. Okay.
In the case of Liberia, we have a field assistance in project community, and we also have the phone numbers for different miners. So we try to communicate them with phone calls first because they don't have any internet access. And in the case of Liberia, the government put the restriction on movement, but it was not that strict. So they allowed the humanitarian groups to move around. So we actually went each community to talk to them. So that's how we did. And we convened the workshop in the communities. Yeah, so maybe it's not a case for the Papua New Guinea though.
I think that's a good point to recognize that obviously there's different levels of connectivity in these different communities, and that affects kind of the ability to engage, right? And you can see different examples from our presenters. I guess the second question I heard from Michael was around the creating supply chain, you know, connections and how miners were able to bring materials to market in other contexts where, in the case of Papua New Guinea, there was restrictions on movement that limited the trade. And I think, Sebastian, you, looking at the different case studies you looked at, there might be some lessons or experiences there to share that could inform this question. Or others on the call from those initiatives, feel free to jump in with sharing your experience.
So, sorry, can you rephrase the question, please?
I think the question was around the economic, so the COVID disrupted supply chains around material wasn't able to move from communities to traders because of movement restrictions. And so how were these challenges overcome in other contexts is the question.
There's been, in the 4 case studies we observed, there's been different different options. Well, and it's also, you know, the minerals are different. I mean, the COVID has done such a disruption on the diamond market that Gemfair had to basically stop buying for 9 months. But at the same time, they strengthened their field presence, they organized a survey, they organized food drop-offs, they started, so basically created space for new thinking. And they did that in partnership with the miners, which in turn contributed to more trust and therefore more success when they started buying again. In the case of Virtugem, Virtugem was an online platform already, so the solution was already there. In the case of Moyogems, what was really interesting is that the international buyers, because of travel restrictions, could not go there anymore. So basically, they had to turn to rely on a national exporter who had been a participant before, but it was a huge risk, and they built trust together. And now I assume, unless maybe Susan can say something around it, but now it seems that I mean Christina, sorry. Now it seems that they're going to work without international buyers, and the national buyer will do the job. So this is a way of cutting cost.
Hi, could I step in there about Moyo?
Certainly, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so what we managed to do is, because of the relationships that we had already in place through our kind of various trips there previously, we were able to work with a combination of the team from PACT and, as was mentioned then, the local exporter, who's obviously he's required by law anyway to be part of the process. So we were able to deal with him remotely, and then we had the team from PACT supporting him on the ground. So yeah, it wasn't ideal, but it was certainly a way of being able to still hold the what we call the market days, the buying sessions, directly with the miners, because you know, as has been mentioned in other cases, you know, there weren't so many travel restrictions within Tanzania during the last year or so. So with due care and safety precautions, we were able to get enough people in place so that myself and the other buyers, the international buyers, were still able to purchase material from the from the miners and get the money through to the miners safely. So yeah, it was all it was a great team effort, and it was all really successful because of the fact that we'd put the effort into building these trusted relationships beforehand. So
Great.
that's how we made it work.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. I'm gonna call on Zahar here, who's had her hand raised for a question.
Just wanted to thank everybody for the excellent presentations and your facilitation, Nathan. Quick question about how does one facilitate viable or profitable on social entrepreneur-led digital selling platforms going forward, instead of more, instead of donor reliance?
Maybe a question, Sebastian, you wanted to tackle, or Giorgio Che, feel free to step in. Thoughts?
I think the online platform, I would just, amongst the 4 case studies, I think this is really Virtugem who's experiencing the online sales platform. So they should maybe say something. What I would say is that in terms of sustainability, Zahra, online platforms are necessarily cheaper than organizing a full exporting house with with staff and everything. So in terms of cost and sustainability, I think this is the right way to go. Digital platforms are. However, the problem is risk, because when you have less daily interactions between people, physical interactions between people, then you assume a lot of risk that you wouldn't if you had a field presence, right? So how do you manage those risks versus sustainability? And I think Virtugem is starting answering to that question by imposing a standards on buyers, for example. So amongst the first case studies, they are the only one who apply standards for miners and a standards for buyers. So basically what they are saying, the subtext is, what you're doing is risky. We are guaranteeing the veracity of what's on our platform and all, but you should share those risks. You should not rely solely on us. You should share those risks. And whomever comes into the digital platform, whether a buyer, a cutter, a jeweler, or miner, they should know that there is a risk. And this is where trust comes from.
I see we have Susan also on the call, Susan Wheeler from Virtugem. Susan, do you want to share some perspective too on this question around entrepreneurship? And
yeah, sure. So I agree with everything Sebastian's saying, and thank you for the wonderful report and including Virtugem on this. I think a lot of what we're seeing is the digital platforms are continuing to grow in the gemstone sector. So all of the major digital platforms that are running now, whether they're diamonds or whatever else, they're going to continue to cover colored gemstones, which is a big opportunity, I think, for the ASM. For us, a lot of it, we do have the market that Sebastian's talking about that are responsible minded designers. They appreciate the connection that Virtugem has to traders, to miners. They can even get on the phone and speak to a trader. So that connection is very important. So even though we're digital, there still is the person-to-person connection that, you know, is traditional in the jewelry and gemstone trade. That is important. But I think a lot of what we've learned in that we work on now and have been working on diligently is it's about building up the actual business structure within the source country. So we're keeping the gems in the source countries longer for gem cutting, which brings more benefit economically, and its business structures, even in digital, whether it's everyone getting on an Excel or whatever we need digitally, it's building up the photography, the marketing, all of the infrastructure that goes into any business, because we're really moving about 3 sections of the supply chain, or actually keeping 3 sections of the supply chain in country. So that's about 3 different business models that have to be taught, learned, and facilitated.
great points, Susan. And I think we're unfortunately coming up against time here for our webinar discussion, but it's been really, I think, an engaging one, and I see there's a lot of kind of dialogue happening in the chat as well. And I hope that what we can do is continue this. What we'll be doing is sharing this recording with the working group, posting it and making it available on the Dell platform. And we'll also be following up with the presentations for folks here. But I hope this conversation has been really helpful and informative, and we'll share the contact information for the presenters for today and others that were noted, so that folks can further engage and have these conversations. But just want to say thank you to our 3 presenters for your time and sharing about these efforts and response work that you're doing. And I really hope, that we can continue this conversation through the working group and other facilities going forward. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the conversation today, and look forward to continuing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.